So as I've said, we will really talk about the Annex 16 products, which are special products because there are new products within MDR that are under the MDR scope. And I think it's really important to clarify those elements. Okay, we'll just make Stefan and Erik enter. So Stefan, you are on mute. Unmute. So hey, hello. Stefan, how are you?
Hello, it's nice to meet you.
Good. Hey, Erik, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good as well. Thanks.
Great.
Nice to be here again.
So let's see if everybody is already arrived. So as I said, just maybe say hi on the comments and just tell me where you are from, so that we can see if everything is working well. So just for people, we have gathered a lot of questions related to Annex 16 products. And the idea is now to present those questions, and with the help of Erik and Stefan, we'll try to answer to them. I hope this will cover all the questions that can be possible with Annex 16 products. But as we maybe never know, maybe in the audience there is more questions, so you are free to just post that, and then we can look at them, and then I will try to tell that to Erik and Stefan so that they can answer. Okay, hello, John Exley. Hello from the UK. Hi. Who else? Okay, so Erik, Stefan, are you confident to have some clear answer for the people related to Annex 16 product? Because it's not clear for everybody, so let's try to say that.
We will keep it very vague.
Yet?
Well, yes, no, it depends.
Yes, no, it depends, exactly. I'm sure it's the same for everybody, because as this is new products, we have really some uncertainty. We don't know everything, so we'll try to answer the question as much as possible. But yeah, we will try to see if this is satisfying for you. So okay, I have more people. Surav Vijayageta, hi. Gokan, hi. Sandra, hi. So let's start, guys. So as I've said, I have listed some questions that I researched related to Annex 16. I will show them on the screen, and then what's his marked? No enemy, what?
There's no enemy worse than bad advice. That also applies to this, actually.
Okay. Okay, so let's see if it's working. So I will just share my screen here. Okay, here is the first question. Why is the MDR being applied to Annex 16 products which were not under such regulation in the past? So Erik, maybe first to go for it.
Yeah, it's all about risk, basically. There are what you see if you look in the Annex 16 products regulatory part of the MDR, you will see that there are a lot of bridges between the Annex 6 products and the MDR. And for example, many products that are called under Article 16 have a very similar risk profile to, let's say, medical products, medical devices, like, for example, contact lenses that are for cosmetic purposes. So let's say I want to have nice lizard eyes and I get colored contact lenses for that. Basically, the risk profile that's related to those contact lenses are exactly the same as for normal contact lenses. Let's say, for example, I have laser equipment that I'm going to use for tattoo removal that has more or less the same risk profile as medical laser equipment, for example, for let's say for the removal of particularly problematic scars, because that would just about be medical, I think. So that's basically what the rationale behind this. There were quite a lot of incidents with non-medical products that had a similar risk profile. Like there have been incidents with cosmetic contact lenses, and then they decided in the EU, okay, let's upgrade this whole bunch of devices to a standard similar to medical devices.
So I think there is maybe some history also with those products that had some issues, and maybe it's mainly that put them in scope. Something else from your side, Stefan?
No, it's completely what Erik has said. It is from a history. It is same risk profile, and so it has a decent feeling to say this kind of devices should be regulated in the same idea as a medical device. However, personally, I have a very bad feeling on it because I think, okay, once I had a hair removal device in the past, what's now the difference? It will still be the same hair removal. I had no problems. And that is for the user perspective. That's a very, very strange decision. However, on the other hand, the user mostly has no idea about regulations, so they don't care.
Yeah, no, it's true. So it's something that is behind the scenes, so they don't see that. But for them, there will be no changes, if I can say, to be still the same product, maybe with more information on the instruction for use, more labeling detail, etc. But at the end, it's behind the scene for them, so they don't see that.
Usability engineering, very important too. There's a lot about risk management specifically for that category of devices with lay people in mind. And the thing with users is always, users don't care about regulation until they are actually harmed by a product. And that's like a sort of universal law of product liability. No user cares until the shit hits the fan, and then the manufacturer is the criminal. So
no, it's clear. Yeah, as you said. So when everything is going well, nobody's complaining. But when it's going wrong, then they are asking why it's possible to have this kind of products on the market, and then they are asking for more regulation on that. Yep. Okay, let's go to next question. If I can make it, yes. Okay, so I think you give some examples of Annex 16 products. So we had contact lenses, we had laser pulse for hair removal. I think there is also liposuction that were used for aesthetic. There is some implants like breast implants or body implants, but specifically for aesthetic. What else?
Implants.
Yeah, the six-pack implants for people that want to do some six packs. This was not a medical device before because it was just for aesthetic, and now it is. Even if, as we said, it's exactly the same that for a breast implant or for any other implant, it's exactly the same material, but it's not the same intended use. So it's why it was not classified as a medical device before.
Don't forget the dermal fillers. They're also a nice category of.
The what? Can you repeat?
The dermal.
Dermal filler, the Botox, hyaluronic acid. We have the brain stimulators. I missed one maybe. I can't remember. But these are the products. Just one thing: is a UV cabin for sunlight considered now as a medical device?
Probably not, because it's not
pulsed light, maybe.
Well, it doesn't fit the definition of light, I think. It can be a non-coherent source, so it can. That's actually that's a non-laser source.
So it's I think there is really, what is on Annex 16 for people. There is only definitions.
It would need to be for skin treatment or skin resurfacing, tattoo or hair removal, and I don't think that a daylight cabin does that. I mean, maybe
I don't think
psychologically, but it's not for skin treatment.
There's a very good thinking behind it. For example, if it's a UV cabin, it is not for changing or altering on the body by taking something out. It's not taking something away from the body. It's just changing. So it changes activating, like for example, like that. And it's not carrying off the surfaces. It's not surfacing at all. So it's just introducing. And that's a very good, very, very tight and small, very, very small decision we will need to take, because in general, UV light for changing for skin resurfacing would be a medical device according to the Annex 16. But the cabin for just altering the biological and biochemical systematic, not. And that's there's a lot of things still to do. And for my personal thinking, I would not take the cabin as a medical device at Annex 16.
But just for people also listening, so Annex 16 is currently listing, I think, 6 products definitions. But in future, there can be more. There can be some changes to that.
Yes, that list is subjected to be changed at all in any time.
Yeah.
So they can add more products to it. They can add anything. What is the act they will do to put that or to change that?
Implementing act, I believe.
So okay, so this is really that thing that they will put an implementing act so that they can change the Annex 16. So more companies can be also under scope now, or more products can be under scope for Annex 16 in future. So we will see that. Okay. Are such products only used by professional or also by end users? So I think it's by everybody. It's any product that is on the market.
Yep.
But I think there is some products like those Pulse Light for hair removal. I don't know if it exists for just a layperson or if it's because I see it's big equipment. So I don't think they will be having that at home, I suppose. But
you will. You will. For example, there's one very, very good thing which was promoted and marketed by the model Sylvie Mais, which directly does that thing, IPL with hair removal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but for use at home, is it that?
It's at home. It's for home use. It's a very small device. It's pretty cool.
So this is a medical device then with Annex 16, and then
Yes.
they have to have the same thing. I mean, it's the same as any medical device we have. We have some medical devices that are used by professionals, but you have also all the diabetic devices to remove some blood and to check your blood. So it's used by any person, etc., etc. So it can be both also.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
There is a similar question, but would you consider such product being sold directly to the user and therefore do not need any medical supervision? So this is something that we are checking with the medical device regulation, that this is well used by a professional or by a user. So Erik, is there any difference in terms of a normal medical device and this medical device that will become medical device, if I can say, as soon as the MDR is applicable?
Well, not that much, except that the common specifications that are currently still in the works give a lot of really specific rules per product category when it comes to risk evaluation, risk measures, risk management, clinical evaluation, labeling, and of course, I mean. The way the risks attached to the product can determine whether you should make it a product that is should always be in the hands of a professional, or rather can be used by a layperson at home. That's explicitly part of the risk assessment for the laser products, for example.
But can we say that? I mean, I suppose, but I don't know because I'm not on this field, but I suppose this is already the case, even if it's not a medical device, they are making all
these. Of course. Yeah, of course. It's, you see it with the other medical devices as well, that you need to take into your usability plan and your overall risk management, whether this is something that you can give to a consumer to do by themselves.
So yeah, there is really, we are really looking at the same risks and try to say that it can be used by a lay person and without any risk. And I think it's the same. This risk management is really important here.
But mind you, because with these non-medical devices, with general medical devices, there is the risk management part of the MDR. In Annex 1, sections 1 to 8, but then there is a specific part 9 of Annex 1 that says, but for non-medical devices you need to do it just a bit differently, because you have to look at different risks. because you do not because you have to look at the maximum acceptable risk related to the product's use. So you need to define also a maximum acceptable risk, which is something that is not the kind of thing you would be used to under the medical devices regulation. And also, you have to be very careful not to apply the general risk management standards to these non-medical devices, because there are common specifications. And the common specifications are really specific in a complete checklist per category of things that you must have checked for risk management. So it's like a whole shopping list that you must check off. So one of the big mistakes you could make as a manufacturer is just look at the ISO 14971 standard, even the 2019 one, and then say, so I'm done with my risk management, because you would never get anywhere that way.
Stefan?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I really, don't blame me for that, but I really like the draft of the common specification, because it tells a non-medical device manufacturer exactly where to look at. However, you also need to apply the ISO 14971 as well. You should not end with a checklist, but the checklist is, my perspective, great if you start with your devices and need to do them to be medical device, Annex 16 medical device.
Yeah.
So Erik, you're absolutely right.
And a lot of the problems start for my clients where they have something on the market that is already a medical device. They've got their risk management done. They have a complete technical file, and then they need to redo the complete risk management, and sometimes also adopt design solutions that amount to an actual device change, which they really don't like very much.
Yes, and there's a real medical device manufacturer, the real one, needs to be very careful on it, because they have the process, the forms, their templates, and the common specification adds an additional part. Yep. So they need to consider the common specification as a standard impacting the process, the templates, the forms, the checklist.
Yeah, even the clinical evaluation. There's even parts for the clinical evaluation that are prescribed in the common specifications.
So in terms of products like what we just talked about, I suppose, I don't have an example for now, but I suppose there will be some products that are considered as medical devices, but have also some aesthetic functions. So would we consider the aesthetic function in that case, or we just consider the medical device function?
Let's see. I think there is some language also about dual use devices that can be used for a medical and a non-medical purpose. But then you would also need to evaluate them for both purposes, especially if the medical purpose is going to be is happening in a different user environment, for example. So
should we use the common specification specifically for those aesthetic features, and the medical device standards for the medical features specifically?
Yeah.
So it will be really a big dossier, if I can say.
Theoretically, you can also place them on the market as two separate devices.
Yeah, true.
You could have the exact same device, but then in different CE marked configurations, one as a medical device and one as a non-medical device.
Okay, so it's can give some ideas maybe for some manufacturers. Just looking on the questions, we have a question about the common specification, but it will come just after, so I will leave it for later. The UDI requirements, I think it's not specifically for Annex 16 because Annex 16 do need to have the UDI same as the other products, so it's not there is no difference here.
Well, there's a slight difference in the sense that you have to explicitly, there's a UDI marker for it being a non-medical device.
Okay. So it is what? It is a specific code at the end or something like that?
Yeah. It's it needs to be vectored into the UDI that this is a non-medical device and not a medical device.
Okay, so I think it's important here for people to not just use the rule of UDI for MDR, but really think about as a non-medical device, you have some additional rule for that. What else? Further definition of the consumer used devices is required to be set. So with the MDR, we have now the definition of a lay person, which was, I think, not available with the medical device directive. So now we have, if I can say, the lay person who is using the device, but is not a professional user. So it's something that is additional. So it can be applied to also the Annex 16 products.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to the next question now. For example, okay, we have a specific example here. IPLS B2C have been on the market for a while with excellent safety track records. Is the MDR lead to safer products or only put more burden on products that have demonstrated to be already safe? I think we discussed about that just before, or some question before, to say that, I think it's you, Stefan, who said there is a lot of, the product is already safe, and why we have MDR, but we have some additional regulatory things to check. But do we consider that adding MDR to this process will create some more safer environment for the product?
Actually, I would think yes.
Okay.
Not because the product will be redesigned or something like that, or it will be registered. No, but it will be considered as more about all the risk topics, the relevant risk topics, and maybe there will be some changes with it. Oh, we have never thought about that. Or the information for use will be extended to make it more clear to the end user. This is actually with any kind of consumer device, you can do it like you want, nearly. And now with MDR, you get specific routes from the Annex 1 to this, to that, to this. And that will increase the use, the performance and the safety of the use of the device. And that's a good thing.
Okay. And I think also because now these devices, since they are tied into the MDR, they are also subject to the whole life cycle improvement concept that the MDR has. So as a manufacturer, you'll be forced to, as a matter of PMS, continuously think about how can I make my product better. And the way this question is also phrased is that is the, let's say, traditional medical devices thinking, where people would say, I have just enough data to place my product on the market, to CE market, and then I sit on my hands forever unless there's a big crisis. And that, of course, that is not the best way to work with devices that have risks attached to it, because if you don't continuously improve the device and are continuously looking for what unknown becomes a known unknown or a known, then you cannot actually say that the product has been demonstrated to be already safe. It's a loaded question, because the fact that you managed to place a product on the market and the product never caused massive problems, it doesn't mean that the product has been demonstrated to be already safe, because having a device on the market is a permanent falsification exercise. And that is something that I think should be really clear. That's also what they try to achieve, because these are products that have the same risk profile as medical devices, so they should be regulated to the same standard. That is the thinking. And if the manufacturer that is behind this question is so incredibly sure that his product is completely developed to the maximum extent and there are no risks to manage anymore, then he should have fantastic data and be way ahead of his colleagues when doing conformity assessment for this new requirements, and then he could outcompete everybody easily. So that's your side of the coin, I think.
Yeah, no, I think, as you said, the double side. So just one thing. So I have a comment here have a comment here from Keith Wilkinson. Is there a level set for the amount of energy being transferred to the body, which that means that is covered by being transferred to the body, that means a product is covered by the MDD, such as EMS. But here, a non-medical device is not covered by MDD, so it's mainly for only MDR. But is there a limit where we say that this amount of energy means that we have a transfer to the body, or there is anything that is transferred to the body as an energy is considered as an active device.
I haven't seen any absolute limits in the common specifications for that. But that, of course, it's all part of the clinical evaluation. Like, what is the effect that I want to, the clinical effect that I want to achieve, and what level of energy is necessary for that? And safe.
Yes. Yeah, but there is one thing. I had a very long discussion with one notified body, and there's the principles then of the equivalent safety. So if you have a medical device performing the same action, then you need to look also in that standards and have the limit. Maybe you have a limit, maybe not. From the common specification, it don't tells you there's a limit, but the maybe one of the standards, say electrical standards or something like that, give you a specific limit where you should not operate about it, like photoelectronics or human light exposure or something like that.
Yeah,
okay.
But it's not easy to answer that completely general because that's not possible for any device.
Okay, another question from Sue Darcy, eSmart Consulting. So are all LEDs becoming medical devices? It's unclear as the high intensity claim is not defined. You take it, Stefan?
Yes. Well,
Good
question. Very good question.
LED by itself, the LED by itself is not a medical device.
Yes.
So all machine or all the equipment is a medical device from the intended purpose. So a LED by itself is just a component used to be on the machine, but it's not a medical device.
No.
Absolutely, and it tells specifically about the group 4 and 5 of the Annex 16. And you need to consider that this group, you need to do not just take out high intensity light or ultraviolet light. You need a complete sentence, and there is what a good lawyer tells you. You'll use the full context about that sentence, and if it fits, then yes. If it does not fit at all, and it completely or with a common good understanding and sense, then do not use it.
Oh, this good lawyer has one scenario, by the way, where a LED could become a medical device, could become a device under the regulation. That would be the Article 23, Section 2 situation, where you would have a replacement LED that has an extremely increased performance, for example, that takes the device that can emit way more energy, which is a replacement LED for the non-medical device, because this also applies to the non-medical devices. And in that case, that replacement part, that LED, would be a medical device by itself, or a device by itself.
That's good. A good example. So if you are replacing, if you are authorizing some LEDs to be replaced, be clear on what is maybe the brand or the level or the elements to not fall under the medical device regulation then. Other question. Other question from Sandra Alvera. So my question is why we are assuming that only the MDR will be a vehicle is the way to manufacturers to innovate, a vehicle for the manufacturers to innovate. So do we think that MDR will be helping for the innovation also or not?
Not at all.
Well, it depends on who you ask. I think that there will be a lot of innovation in risk management as part of the PMS, as part of the post-market clinical follow-up. I think there's definitely development there. But in innovation in terms of new applications, it might be more complex to get one of these devices to the market these days.
But can we say that because of MDR or that the fact that some of those new manufacturers have to apply MDR, this will, if I can say, kick out some people, some manufacturers that are not really at the level and that are placing those devices on the market without really following any clear regulation. So is this something that is helping the ones that are really compliant and really be disqualifying those that are here just to sell products but not really caring about safety or anything like that?
Yeah, that's explicitly the intention behind this. Because, for example, if you look at the cosmetic contact lenses, that's an area where they really want the bad ones out.
Because of there is some irritation, some public health situation, or things
There,
like
there,
that.
there were people that lost eyes over that. So because the lenses were not sufficiently sterile, because there were other issues, and yeah, I mean, the problem is that there were companies that treated devices that had a relatively high risk profile, basically as party stuff, which is nice, but then you immensely increase risk. It's a bit like the old days when you could have an X-ray of your hand at the carnival when it was still special, right? I mean, it's exactly that kind of situation.
Okay, now it's clear. Yeah. Okay, so let's move forward with the questions now. Currently, manufacturers of such products are waiting for the publication of the consultation of the CS, so Common Specification, by March 2020. So do you have more information about those common specifications?
Yes, don't expect them by March 2020.
Okay. It's good because I think the next, let's go to the next question just because it's the same, I think. Do you see a possibility to postpone the entry into force of common specification beyond the period of 6 months after the publication? So first, as we said, don't expect that by May 2020, but is there a transparency or clear information from the Commission related to that, or it's really we are really blind and we don't see exactly what is happening there?
Well, if you look on the internet, the agenda for the MDCG meeting of 11 and 12 March has just dropped.
Okay.
And I don't see endorsement of the Annex 16 common specifications on it. So that means that it's not going to be endorsed in the March MDCG meeting. So you won't see them in March. It's that simple.
So just to clarify also the rule for the Annex 16 product. So the rule is, as soon as the common specification will be published, then the manufacturer has 6 months to apply them and then to be in compliance with MDR. Is it correct?
Well, the common specifications apply 6 months after their publication. That's correct. And then if you are going to place a new product, if you are going to go with a new product and you want an MDR certificate for a non-medical device, or you want to place a Class 1 non-medical device on the market, then you will need to abide by these common specifications.
Okay.
But there was another question about transitional regime, which is quite interesting because some of these non-medical devices are medical devices currently. There are, for example, there are some manufacturers that have laser hair removal devices registered as medical devices. So those devices, they can actually go in the transitional regime of Article 120, Section 3, and they can be on the market under the old certificate until expiry of the old certificate or 2024, because there is no exception for non-medical devices.
So you mean that there were medical devices within the MDD, but how they can be on the scope of MDD if they are not, they have no medical purpose? So is there how they can be CE under medical devices without a medical purpose?
Oh, breast implants, for example.
Yeah, as we said, there is some implants that can be used not specifically for medical purpose, but are they adding some medical indication to it, or
contact lenses?
But they are adding some medical indication to it. They are saying this is to be used for this medical indication, or?
Well, under the medical devices directive, the definition of medical device did not contain, as it does under the medical devices regulation, the requirement that the device has to be for a specific medical purpose.
Okay.
So actually, there were quite a lot of these non-medical devices that were sort of fudged into the MDD, even by notified bodies and their certificates, because it was just a very sensible thing to do, because that would manage the risks for these devices very well. And sometimes it wasn't always possible for the manufacturer to determine whether a device was medical or not. And let's say, for example, I have a laser device for scar removal or scar treatment of scars. Then under the MDR you would be in group 5, the laser devices for other skin treatment. Well, the fact that it says skin treatment sounds kind of medical to me.
Okay.
If I would go to a notified body 5 years ago with a device and say, hey, this is a laser device for skin treatment, yeah, notified body might have said, okay, that's medical enough. And there also have been competent authorities that have said, hey, I don't, considering the risks for this device, I don't think this should be a general device that is just subject to the LVD and the EMC directives and then placed on the market. No, this is something that is actually used for treatment by physicians. So how can that not be medical? You have to go to the medical devices directive with your device. That has happened.
So can we say that the manufacturers that now use this card, if I can say, to be MDD, are ahead competition and are really on the right track to pass this burden, if I can say, of the regulation?
Well, I think they have more experience with how medical devices regulation works. Of course, the other. I think when it comes to the active devices that are in the scope of Annex 16, these manufacturers will also already have experience with the technical documentation and with CE marking logic and with standards and all of that.
Yeah.
But I do think that if you're a medical device, yes, you have an advantage because you understand risk management thinking specifically for medical devices, which I think is a big plus here. And most of all, you understand clinical evaluation, which is something you see in no other CE marking regulation or directive, and that's an art in itself almost.
Okay, Stefan?
Yeah, absolutely. My team transfers a few companies which have now medical devices under Annex 16, and we see the difference between companies who already had a medical device in the past and those who did not have, but had LVP or red LVD or red directive or all of that. They know how to deal with standards, and there are a few of them who never had to do anything about it with it, and then they are asking things like, okay, why do we need to follow that regulation? Why do we need to take on an IFU and something like that, which is completely different now? And so for that, you have an advantage if you already know about medical devices in the past. However, well, there are plenty of discussions, especially for the active medical devices.
Mm-hmm.
That is a very, very tough topic because most of them in the past, most of them did not take on a notified body because they did not need to. And now even many of the group 5 will not need a notified body because they are not active therapeutic. And not active therapeutic means class 1.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay. Okay, so I think we answered to this one. Will manufacturer have to apply the new rule 6 months after the entering into force of the CS,
yes,
or have a different understanding? So yes, we said yes, 6 months after the notification is entering. What is the role of the member state in the discussion? So do we ask them something to the member states, or they are really not on the game?
I think the member states are big culprits in the slow adoption of the common specifications. So they have an incredibly negative role in these discussions, I think.
Okay. Means that they don't accept it, or they are having a lot of questions, or?
Well, there's only one reason why these common specifications would be delayed, and that is because, I mean, the Commission drafts the common specifications, so they will only draft something that they agree with themselves, right? So then then of course there's stakeholders feedback. Well, I know from some clients that they really hated the common specifications, but they in the end they'll live with it, because they will give their feedback, and then the Commission won't, or the MDCG won't listen anyway, and then you will have these common specifications. But the member states are the MDCG,
Okay.
and the MDCG needs to sign off on these common specifications. And the fact that this is taking so long is because the MDCG is not united on this. Apparently, it's the only reason I can come up with.
So does it mean that manufacturers should be happy of that? I suppose that it's delayed, so they have more time to be prepared for that, and they have more time to be to place their products on the market as MDR.
Well, yes and no, because usually when things are delayed this way, then there is some kind of a volcano eruption brewing that will lead to some compromise solution that usually nobody's really happy with. So that's definitely a risk, I would say.
Okay. For you, Stefan?
Yeah, that's the member states, that's one of the big disadvantages, in the regulatory situation in Europe, because they delay a lot of the things. So
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we need all of them.
Yeah, exactly. We need to move forward with that, because I think manufacturers don't like unclear things, so they want to plan. They want to have some kind of planning and scenario and know where they are going. So it's important. Okay,
absolutely.
Given the shortage of notified bodies, highlighted in previous podcasts, I think Erik is also part of those podcasts. Is it desirable that there is a delay of entering into force of the rules, or how to deal with this situation? So, in one side, we have, as I've said, a lot of notified bodies that are missing. We have 11 as of today for MDR. And in the other way, we have the common specification that are not published. So there is a lot of things that are unknown at that time. So how can we deal with that in terms of, as we are a non-medical purpose manufacturer? So is there some different scenarios we have to work on now?
Well,
okay, from my point of view on that, define if you need a notified body, define if you are class 1 or something else. If you're not a notified body, if you do not need a notified body, wait for a common specification and be quick. And if you need a notified body, we have the problem with the shortage. Yes, do it fast, do it now. File your application in it, look at the common specifications, the draft, no matter if it's good or not, take it as it is, take the regulation seriously, and then go for it. You don't have time to waste.
Okay.
Yeah, the problem is that, of course, the reflex of the market is always to say we need a delay. And that's not always the first reaction, but the problem is it desirable that there is a delay? Well, it depends on who you ask. The regulator will say, no, it is not desirable that there is a delay. So in the end, the only way to deal with this situation is, rather than crying wolf, is making sure that you are well prepared, as Stefan says. Because I see that with a lot of companies, actually the ones that are shouting the loudest that there must be a delay are usually the ones that have completely not prepared the way they should have. because these rules, I mean, this has been on the table for about 3 years now. Huh? So if you are saying as a manufacturer now, like, oh no, there suddenly are these rules and I have to comply. Come on, I mean, what rock have you been living under for the last 3 years, right? I mean,
absolutely.
And
yeah, I hope with all what in the information we provided since now 2 years, with the podcast, with the episode, with everything, people are informed. But I think, people have really to understand that it's not something that just arrived now. It's something
I will tell you something else. What I see with the bigger companies, especially in this regard, it's not the first time that I have regulatory people that tell me that of a client that say, we raised this with management 3 years ago, and they said, well, not an issue yet.
Okay.
Or they would say, you have no budget. You can do this as a hobby project on the side. And then they are surprised that they get overtaken by the facts. I mean, that's just not the way it's supposed to work. It's a reality of things that the law changes. This MDR is here. You are going to have to go into it sooner or later, and kicking the can down the road. The only thing it does is that it gives the CEO another 3 months for his quarterly earnings report, and then the CEO may be gone. But the company stays. So that is I mean, for the company. This is important to just attack it. I've been in situations where actually the client fired me because I told the CEO in front of the regulatory department that the regulatory department was more important to the company than him at that moment, because they were going to keep his core business running, and they could do without him at the moment. And it's apparently not the kind of joke that Americans like very much, so they immediately fired me. But, I mean, this is reality. This is true.
Yeah, I think the situation is not only difficult for those non-medical products, but for all manufacturers that are delaying, if I can say, their projects for MDR or for IVDR, because IVDR is also coming after. So this is important to remind that you have really to act. As I've said, keep calm and accept MDR. Don't think that it will be delayed again or this or that. Just move forward. And as we talk with Erik about scenarios on some podcasts, you have to plan some scenarios. There is a lot of things that are coming on the plate, so you have really to be ready for that.
I will add the rule of Erik's grandmother, because my grandmother, she would always say in Dutch, uitstel is geen afstel, or delay, postponement doesn't mean it's not going to happen. So it's going to happen in the end. So
exactly.
rather do it in an organized, controlled fashion rather than let it catch up with you.
No, it's clear, completely clear. Okay, next one is about this one I like it because I think interesting. Could such product benefit from a corrigendum, so postponement of entry into force, even if there have not been any mistakes, such as, let's say, in the translation of the regulation? So we are talking specifically here, I think, about the second corrigendum that put some delay on up-classified class 1 products. Mm-hmm. And here, can we have the same rule or same thing happening for non-medical devices, non-medical purpose products?
Well, only if they were a medical device under the directive, under the directives, then you can go into the Article 120 regime, and otherwise not. It's as clear cut as that.
So, can we say that you have 3 months or 4 months to be under MDD, if possible, so that you can benefit from that?
Well, no, because either you have a certificate or a declaration of conformity as a medical device under the Medical Devices Directive, in which case you can decide, okay, I have options, right? I can even when the common specifications enter into force and the regulation applies to my product, I am comfortably in the Article 120 Section 3 regime. Fantastic. And then I can decide when in this period I can make the jump to the medical devices regulation to being a non-medical device. But if you're not a medical device at this moment, then as soon as the common specifications enter into force, then you have 6 months to get your certificate, and that means that's also what Stefan impressed. That's why it's relevant now to already get your foot in the door with a notified body, because otherwise you will never ever make it to a certificate in time.
Yeah, as we said also, I think on some episodes with Stefan, we try to evaluate how long it takes to get a certificate, and for now we arrived to kind of 1 year because of some time slots. To get a time slot with some notified bodies, it can take to 1 year to finalize that.
Well, I don't know what Stefan thinks, whether a non-medical device would be quicker, but I wouldn't necessarily say so.
No, and I do not also don't expect that there will be a new corrigendum, a third corrigendum for specifically Annex 16, because there's no need to do that. If the European Commission wants to delay the Annex 16 products, they simply do not endorse the common specification. So that's it. If they want to do that, they can do it at any time because they have not given something to the world. So if they want to have it fixed, and then they are, I would not understand the situation that they endorse the common specification and 3 months later tell us, oh, there's a corrigendum, this one needs to be later on. That will not be a very good way. So I do not think about that. There will be a delay.
That means in terms of scenarios, as a non-medical devices manufacturer that does not have a product as a medical device at the moment, you need to be prepared as of end May to be in a situation where you can always get a certificate within 6 months. So that means that if you take the position, if you take the 1 year duration for certification, as you mentioned, that you need to have minus 6 months of preparation already behind you. So that means that you need to be in a situation where you're already 6 months into your certification process, which means that you should have started before the beginning of this year.
Yeah, no, I think it's clear. But as we are not expecting the common specification to be released by the 26th of May 2020, we maybe still have the 1 year period. If the corrigendum will be applicable, what is the process and what are your recommendations? So I think we answer to the questions mainly that we don't think it will be applicable and that it is in conflict with the common specification because we have already the process for common specification to delay the products to be placed on the market. But for me, the question is about, we made the second corrigendum to say that any product that is up-classified, that need a notified body now because of MDR, require this extension of until 2024. Can we not consider those non-medical devices as up-classified because now they need a notified body, etc.? Is it not something that, I mean, I know I'm playing here the advocate, but it's just to try to see if there is some possibilities here.
No, that will not work. If Erik already explained it, if you would be a medical device class 1 now under MDD, then you can use that. If not, no. There's no way. If you don't be a medical device now and will be one with the Annex 16, then it will not work. And that's also meant with, it shall not work in that case.
Okay.
Specifically says so in the recitals of the regulation. If you read the recitals of the regulation, it says, we have built in this 6 months phase-in period for applicability after the common specifications become applicable, so that companies have the time to adapt. So the legislator is apparently thinking that even in the worst case that you've been sitting on your hands or living under a rock, that you can get a certificate in 6 months. Of course, that is completely unrealistic, but they took the trouble to put in some kind of additional transitional period. So if you ask the Commission now, can I have an additional transitional period? They will say, excuse me, you have a transitional period on top of a transitional period already. And now you want a third transitional period on top? Go away. We have bigger fish to fry. That's what they'll say.
Yeah. Can we say also that, as you said, we have bigger fish to to try to get, that the Annex 16 products are not bigger fish also for them?
Well, I don't know if you could say it like that, but I would actually say that this is an important category for the regulatory framework, because otherwise, why would you get this whole category that was not medical devices into the regulation in the first place? I think actually this is important because the MDR was about showing about upping the level of regulation and especially safety for these types of products. So this is an explicit wish of the legislator that this is in. So I don't think they necessarily consider this that's important. And especially if you look at the quite detailed common specifications, I've got them here. It's quite a document. It's about if you go look into the annexes, like for example, well, let's look at some risk reduction measures. In some cases, there's like a whole list, like here, the whole page of don't forget all these risk reduction measures. They wouldn't do that if they didn't think it's important.
Yeah, I think it's clear. It's clear about that, and I think there is a lot of work invested on that. But as you mentioned, there are some common specifications that are under progress now, and they have to issue one per category of product. Is it correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yes,
well,
and okay. What you want?
No, you go, Stefan.
Okay,
I'm talking all the time.
That is one of the mistakes I did on the first attempt to read it. I started with it, looked at it, and seen, okay, it starts with contact lenses. It's not my one. Well, there are 6 annexes within it, and for each of the groups. Do not, if you look at it, say, it's the set scope is only about contact lenses. That does not mean that there's not another scope behind it. So very careful on the read-through. There will be only one common specification at first.
Okay.
Yeah, and additionally, what you should also, I think, keep in mind is that, of course, there are these annexes per product. Then there's a general methodology sitting on top. And this is where the whole lack of harmonized standards for the MDR is also becoming a problem. If you have a non-medical device, the common specifications say you should specifically look at similar technologies for risk management. Now, if there are, for example, standards for specific other technologies, you also need to go after those. And if they're not harmonized yet, then it makes it even more difficult, because then you also need to argue why those standards are state of the art or are not state of the art. So it's really quite a tricky amount of homework you have to do.
Yes, absolutely. For example, if you have one of the IPL lasers or something like that, or hair removal devices, then you need to consider, okay, it's not a harmonized standard yet, but the state of the art is the 60601-1 and the EMC with 60601-1-2, and you need to apply them, especially if you can take equivalence with the existing standard you maybe have tested with 60, 90, 50 or something like that. But all the risk points out of it, you should have considered completely in your risk management file, and then define it. If you need to look even further. For example, if it's for laymen, then you have maybe a home care device. So it's not care, but it's a home use device in that case, and then 60601-1-11 takes in place. And this is the thinking you need to have. You need to think as a non-medical device manufacturer. You need to think as a medical device manufacturer.
Oh, it's clear. Okay, so let's go next. If it is not applicable, which other means are available to delay the entry into force given the unclarity of the situation? So we said it's mainly the common specification that can be delayed so that you have more time to put in place your product. So we already talked about that.
Well, you could kidnap Ursula von der Decken and hold her ransom, maybe. That's on the line. I mean, otherwise I would be out of options because, yeah, and of course there are. I mean, I'm always talking about scenarios. So this is one. Capture Ursula von der Leyen. That's. I would say that's your worst case scenario.
Okay, so the last option.
You could also do. You could at least manage risk. Let's say, for example. You have found out that I will never be in time with my notified body because I was living under a rock. I waited way too long. Now I'm in the queue and the notified body is not even picking up the phone when I call them and they don't answer my emails. What am I going to do? Well, at least what you can do is limit the adverse effects of the situation on your company and start to think in terms of scenarios like how much can I still produce and place on the market before these common specifications enter into force. Very important. Because there's one thing, of course, to stick your hands in the air and yell around like your hair is on fire and scream, there has to be a delay. But you can also think like, how can I manage this situation and at least do better than my competitors in managing the crisis that we may be facing. So think about stockpiling. Maybe also think about like, okay, maybe the European market is going to be slightly less interesting for me for the moment. Maybe I should concentrate a bit more on accelerating market access in other markets. That's all possible, and maybe even use the experience with the device in other markets as a basis to get an even better technical documentation in the door with the notified body.
So as we can see, there is a lot of potential options with the worst one, with the easy one.
Definitely not do a linear process where you only have a plan A. I see a lot of companies that only have a plan A. If something is, it's a bit like a computer. It runs and then it runs into some object and it says, oh, syntax error. I will sit on my hands until the situation is clear again. This is not how you're supposed to work with this because then the facts will always overtake you.
No, I think it's clear now. Okay, next one is CS will also be accompanied by guidelines, which will be drafted after the publication of the common specification. What is the rule of such guidelines? What is the role of such guidelines?
Well, you would hope provide guidance, but as they often say, confusion everywhere for CE guidelines do not always help a lot, as we've seen with the PRC guidelines. I think one of the worst G documents ever drafted. Fortunately, they are revising it. But yeah, what is the role of such guidelines? What is happening is, of course, that the Commission is in a continuous dialogue with the market about the requirements. So the Commission already will also have a lot of, and the MDCG will have a lot of feedback about how people see the common specifications and what is still unclear. And these are typically the things that the guidelines will address. The guidelines will probably, I expect, also address things like what we've been discussing in this podcast, the transitional regime for various kinds of non-medical devices that were a medical device before or that were not a medical device before. These are typically the kind of things that they would put in these kinds of guidelines, I expect.
Yeah, so it will be guidelines to help to understand the common specification. So you have 6 months to apply those common specification. Those guidelines should be published quickly then to be able to really use them. Yeah,
that's why there's this cynical right between quotation marks, because what we've seen so far is that when guidelines are announced, remember the CAMD announcing this whole roadmap with guidelines in December 2017. Yeah, just don't bet on these guidelines being in time. If you look at the rolling planning of the guidelines now, there is this planning for these guidelines on qualification. That's another point actually where the guidelines could go. Like what is actually what is actually a high intensity electromagnetic radiation, for example. So that's where guidelines are announced. But I mean, the MDCG needs to agree amongst themselves, so among the member states, that they agree about the guidance. And yeah, they've just shown to be completely hopeless at that in some aspects. I mean, for example, the MDCG guidelines on sufficient clinical evidence for legacy products. Everybody has been waiting for that. It just never came. MDCG guidance on clinical evaluation. Well, good luck with that. It's still not here, and it's been on the roster for years. So, I mean, don't bet on. But at the moment, I would say don't bet on the MDCG for guidelines, because of course, yeah, it's on the roster, but better figure it out yourself and get good rationale in, so you don't need to wait for guidelines. Waiting for guidelines is the worst thing you can do at this point.
Yeah, so as we said, use your common sense to try to see what you have to do to be really compliant. But yeah, sometimes, if you are waiting, you will just waste some time, and you will not be following the right path, if I can say so.
It's like
next.
If you wait for things to get nice and happy, then sometimes you get really disappointed.
Yeah, you will not have it specifically. Okay. What else? So next one is, what are your top 3 recommendations for manufacturers of Annex 16 devices at this stage in the process and for the future?
Let's play back the podcast. You want to start, Stefan?
As a top 3 recommendations: classify your device, do it fast, do it now.
Okay. And you, Erik?
I would say scenarios. Really think in scenarios. So sit down and approach this like you are a general in a war, because in a war, the army never has only one plan, because history shows that this is really stupid. So don't have one plan. If your management doesn't believe the urgency, then you need new management, which can be very unfortunate, or you need a new job. If you understand all of this, then you are worth your weight in gold as a regulatory professional anyway. There is a huge shortage in qualified regulatory professionals. So if you are at a company that doesn't appreciate your skills, it's so easy to go elsewhere. Then don't waste your time at this company, I would say. And then the third one is a bit of a philosophical one. It's what Immanuel Kant, the famous Prussian philosopher, said: "Sapere aude," dare to be wise. So make sure that you understand the rules and that you can actually work with them, so you know what to do. So it's a bit of a, let's say, frame around what Stefan said, and make sure that you understand it, and also make sure that you understand the possibilities. Because if you don't understand the possibilities, Erik's grandmother would say, if you don't understand the possibilities, you don't have options.
No, it's clear. And I think it's within this episode today, we really provided a lot of guidance and a lot of things that people have to go through, some recommendation and some tips for them to understand really what is applicable and what not. I will just go through some of the comments that I've seen. I refreshed my thing because I think I was disconnected. Application of 6 months, we answered to that. You mentioned drafts common specification. Where can we find them?
Yeah, already added the link into the box.
You already put that? Okay.
Already commented it, yeah.
Okay, great. What else? I see the link here. Even informed companies who are ready to do this are being pushed back by notified bodies. So as you mentioned, maybe Stefan, Erik, you are calling notified bodies, but they are not answering at all. So it's mainly what will happen also for those companies that have no notified bodies before and now need one. Even for companies that have a notified body, they are maybe in trouble because maybe their notified body would not be MDR accredited, so they have to find another one. So those that don't have a notified body at all can be really in a big trouble.
Yeah, and what you can always do. I mean, I see that actually yesterday I had a company that had their certificate expire just because their notified body was unable to schedule a recertification, a renewal audit in time, and that was purely time. At least that's what the company told me. So in these cases, it is, I think, one of the terrible mistakes in the medical devices regulation that they did not include appropriate recourse against the way notified bodies can act sometimes. But yeah, the only thing you can do is there's not much you can do if a notified body says we're full. But if something like this happens, where a notified body really applies bad administrative practice to you, you can complain to the competent authority that is responsible for the notified body. Not even then a lot happens. I have very bad experiences with some competent authorities that will just say, like, this is a commercial matter, what are you whining about? If you're angry at the notified body, why don't you sue them? But yeah, I mean, that's not a way to get where you need to be quickly, because in court you cannot ask the judge to order the notified body to give you a certificate anyway, because the best thing a judge will do is say, well, this was a bit of a bad evaluation, notified body, do it again, and then you know what the result is going to be.
So yeah, it's as we said, I think we talked about that. As I said, not specifically only for those kind of manufacturers, but for a lot of them. There is actually a shortage of notified bodies, so it can be really a difficult situation. And notified bodies are chased by all the manufacturers to be able to get their certification. So everybody is now, if I can say, in trouble, because even I suppose notified bodies want to help, but they don't have the capacity to do that. So
and that's the important one. I was in Israel earlier this week, where I spent a lot of time with one notified body, and they told me about how impossible it is for them to scale up to the capacity that they need, because they cannot just clone or copy auditors. It takes time to find them. It takes time to train them, and there are just a finite amount of people in the market. That's why I was making this joke about regulatory affairs professionals at this moment being worth their weight in gold, because you can go anywhere.
Yes, absolutely. And if they try to scale and use some kind of baby auditors who just ticking off their checkboxes, you do not want them in your company.
No.
You want ones with a mindset and experience, because they will help you and bring you on the right amount of documentation needed, and not only checking checkboxes.
No, it's clear. It's clear, really clear for that. And yeah, really sorry for all those manufacturers, but yeah, it's a situation, and everybody is now getting in trouble here. Okay, I think we covered everything. Let me check. Yes, we covered everything. Okay, so thank you, everybody, and I wish you a nice weekend.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.